Live Grand Rapids suburbs. Daddy picks up 3-month-old Cooper fails from daycare after work. The baby's all bundled up in his car seat against the cold weather outside. Well, little Cooper sleeps the whole way home. And it is only then, when they get home to mommy, they unbundle baby Cooper and they learn the baby is dead. And the baby has been dead for hours and hours.
His parents believe the death happened while the infant was at daycare. But when his father picked him up a little before 6:00 p.m., Cooper appeared to be asleep in his car seat. But when he got home, it turned out Cooper wasn't asleep at all. He was dead.
Awful! Awful! And what I don't understand, James Gimmel, news director of WJRW, are there any criminal charges in this?
In Michigan, Nancy, 11 violations allegedly of licensing rules, saying that he was allowed to sleep in that car seat. But, exactly how this is going to hash out in terms of the investigation going forward is still remains a question.
Okay, Jim, I didn't hear you at the beginning. Are there any criminal charges? I heard you say something about some violations. You know what? For all I know, that could be a building code violation. All right. Are there criminal charges? The baby is dead.
Well, they are going ahead with the investigation on that, but whether or not they're going to be able to make the charges stick is still a question, Nancy. There's a little bit of confusion as to whether they're going to actually press these charges or amend them.
What? Okay, hold on. Jim, James Gimmel, news director, WJRW, don't move. I'm not mad at you, Jim. I'm mad at the fact this baby has been dead for a really long time. When the daddy picks him up all bundled up, the daddy thinks he's asleep, he's covered, and gets him home. The baby is blue. He's dead. He's been dead. And they gave him to the father dead. Okay, Benjamin Mills is with me right now, the lawyer for the victim's family. Now, Gimmel just told me, Mr. Mills, that they're investigating. Really? How long are they going to investigate? Because you leave a baby at daycare and they give you back a dead baby bundled up so you don't know until you get the baby home? What?
Well, yeah, I understand that is a question, and certainly a question that the family has as to how long the investigation will go on. My understanding is that this has been investigated by the prosecutor, and it's determined at this time that there isn't enough evidence to press charges here, and primarily the reason why is because the manner of death, according to the medical examiner, is undetermined because there were so many questions that they were asking Teresa Mowers, the daycare provider, who wasn't being forthcoming. So there's a lot of questions that are unanswered.
I don't understand that, Mr. Mills. Joining me from Grand Rapids is a veteran lawyer representing the victim's family. It's Benjamin Mills. So what you're saying, I know, Benjamin, you're telling me accurately what has been said, but this doesn't fit to me. It's a non sequitur. It means it doesn't follow that you leave your perfectly healthy baby at daycare when you go to work in the morning. You come pick it up. The baby's all dressed, ready to go, bundled up in its little coat and its hat, and it's got a muffler on against the cold. But the baby is handed to you dead. And the baby has been dead for many, many hours. I've got a problem with that. Joining me is Dr. Devi Nampiaparampil, assistant professor at NYU. Dr. Devi, if they can't figure out why the baby died, then they need to bring in somebody else to figure out why this child died.
Well, they could bring in other experts, but there are some difficulties. So if the baby had something called sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, that means that the baby might have just suddenly stopped breathing without anybody actually facilitating that or causing that. And sometimes if a person has any kind of heart rhythm abnormality, which can happen in babies too,
don't you think,
there's no sign of it later.
Dr. Devi, that if the baby had died of SIDS or heart problems, They would have noticed the baby's dead before they bundle it up and send it home.
I would have hoped they'd call for help.
There's something extremely nefarious about that.
Did Cooper Fales die because of a daycare center's negligence? Cooper appeared to be asleep in his car seat, but when the father and son got home, Cooper's parents found him to be cold and blue. They immediately called 911, but little Cooper couldn't be saved.
Joining me right now, the lawyer for Cooper's family, Benjamin Mills. He's a veteran trial lawyer out of Grand Rapids. Benjamin, thank you for being with us. Okay, let me understand this. I know that that medical examiner says they cannot determine cause of death. Okay. A, I'm not accepting that, number one. But B, can they tell me how long baby Cooper had been dead? That he was dead at the daycare?
Yeah, that's something that's pretty clear from all the medical evidence. When Cooper was discovered, he had advanced rigor mortis, such that his jaw could not be opened to even start life-saving efforts. All the medical evidence and the medical examiner has told us that that level of rigor mortis does not begin until at least 2 hours after the time of death. So when Zach came home with Cooper at 6:10 p.m., he had likely been deceased for 2 hours, potentially more, because rigor mortis takes longer to develop in a baby. And so this means at 4:10 p.m., it's likely that Cooper was passed away at that time. Teresa Mowers, the daycare provider, told investigators that she gave him a bottle at 4 o'clock and watched him play until 5 o'clock when she put him down in his car seat to take a nap. Michigan regulations are very clear that you can't put an infant in a car seat for sleeping. It's not an approved sleeping location, and you can't cover the face of a sleeping baby or any baby. When Zach came to pick him up at 5:45 p.m. that day, he was covered by a car seat cover and was sleeping in his car seat. Both of those are direct violations of Michigan regulations. We know that Cooper had already been deceased for an hour and a half by that point. So either that's just improper monitoring or negligence in terms of allowing him to suffocate. We think that suffocation is the most likely cause of death here.
You know, that's interesting, Benjamin Mills, that you say that, because Dr. Devi, it would seem to me that with suffocation, the medical examiner, the coroner, ought to be able to identify that. I mean, when you suffocate, you very often have hemorrhage in the petechiae, which are the tiny, tiny blood vessels in your eyes. There are many ways to determine if a child suffocates.
There are ways. I agree with you, Nancy. But the thing is, sometimes, I mean, if you're lucky, you might find some fibers in the nose or in the mouth or some signs in the lungs of a suffocation, but you don't always see it. So that might be why they're saying that it's undetermined.
So, Benjamin Mills, I find it very difficult to believe they can't determine cause of death.
They can't determine it. That's what the medical examiner determined, that it's undetermined. And so it's our job, and the reason that we're bringing this civil lawsuit is to try to get some answers. We don't think Teresa Mowers has been forthcoming. We think she's told investigators things that were not true.
Doesn't sound true, Benjamin. Her story does not make sense to me, because we're trying to apply logic to an illogical statement. For her to say that the baby was alive and well at 5 o'clock when the medical examiner says the baby's been dead for 2 hours, do I have the timeline straight, Benjamin?
Medical examiner said time of death was prior to 4:10 p.m. So it would have been 50 minutes at 5 o'clock. But yeah, essentially, that's a long period of time.
Hold on, she's texting at 5:18, Benjamin. Let's put that text back up. The daycare owner is texting, the baby, Cooper, has been spitting up a lot today and sleeping a lot. 5:18 p.m. So at 5:18, she is representing the baby is still alive, all right?
Right.
When the medical examiner is saying that's impossible.
That's impossible by over an hour at that point.